It's live?
Yep.
Oh, let's start the show.
Yeah.
No shame. Welcome to Coffee Talk. I'm Tim. No matter what time of day you're watching this, I'm glad that you're here. Coffee Talk is a place that we intend to facilitate some safe conversations about life, about faith. Hopefully these conversations will challenge you and encourage you as well. Now, we all know that life has been much of a struggle lately. Life has been crazy, but if you really stop and think about it, life is always crazy. I mean, we're sort of living in a lot of uncertainty right now, but let's keep it real. Life is always filled with a lot of unknowns. From birth through adolescence, through your teenage years, young adulthood, marriage, parenting, empty nesters, retirement, life is a mystery. But let's embrace that chaos and the unknown together. So I've become a lot more aware lately that, everybody's going through something. And no matter what you or I might be dealing with, we got to recognize that we're not alone in this. And what better way to do that than through meaningful conversations? So, grab your cup of coffee and settle in, because we're here to create some content that we hope will brighten your day as we dig deep into important conversations that are affecting you today. And today's topic is joy, and how that joy and happiness can lead to empathy. But before we do that, we got to roll into our opening segment. It's called Take 3. All right, take 1. The most quotable television shows. What do you got? Here's the top 5. We got The Simpsons, we got Seinfeld, Friends, The Office, and of course, SpongeBob SquarePants, everybody's favorite. So let's hit a couple of the best quotes from these TV shows. First off, from The Simpsons, one of my all-time favorites is Ralph Wiggum. When he says, "Me fail English? That's impossible." All right, what about Seinfeld? "Hello, Newman." Or, "He's a bit of a close talker." What about The Office? That's one of the most quoted TV shows of all time because of that iconic character, Michael Scott, who said this, "I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little bit stitious." And lastly, SpongeBob SquarePants. How about this one from Patrick when he asked the question that's on all of our minds, "Is mayonnaise an instrument?" Or Mr. Krabs when he says, "Do you smell it? Do you smell it? That smell? That kind of smelly smell? A smelly smell that smells smelly?" We're on to take 2. Sticking with that unforgettable theme, let's talk about unforgettable videos. Remember Vine? That video sharing app where in short snippets you could share random things about yourself. What were they, like 6 seconds long? It was sort of like a predecessor to TikTok. Our younger viewers, they'll understand. If you're of an older generation, just ask your kids or your grandkids. But what are the top 3 Vines of all time? Here's what I say. "I smell like beef."
I smell like beef.
Number 2. The fresh avocado, free shavacado. Yeah, shavacado.
Free shavacado.
Right. Or last but not least, the top 3 Vines of all time. "Look at all those chickens."
Look at all those chickens.
All right, we're up to take 3. Worst jokes of all time. Here we go. What was Beethoven's favorite fruit? Banana. Whoops. All right, well, on today's episode of Coffee Talk, we're going to be discussing the connection between happiness and empathy. Now, empathy is one of those big words that we've all heard before, but it's sort of hard to define. And so in a few minutes, I'll be continuing in my conversation with Kay Wolfinger. She's the director of Young People's Ministries for the East Ohio Conference of the United Methodist Church. She has a lot of experience working with young people, teenagers, young adults, people of all ages, actually. And so we're going to continue in that conversation and lead down a path towards defining and discussing empathy and how true happiness and true joy is found often in self-sacrificial service to others. But first, let's hear what you have to say about happiness. Let's take a look. What else have you found in your experience is a key to happiness for young people, old people?
Well, I think a big part of happiness is doing unto others, which is pretty biblical, right? When we can do nice things for other people or serve others, that brings joy to us. It brings happiness um, to us. It's something simple as it's easy to do things for people outside your home, but imagine what it would be like for your mother if you did the dishes without being asked, or put your clothes away right when they were clean. Those little things that actually bring joy
Right.
to parents and teens don't think about, or, something for a sibling that you would normally not do.
Right.
Feels good to bring other people happiness. And I think that really helps with some of the depression or the dismal, things that we're feeling right now from being cooped up or stuck in is, well, what could you do for a neighbor right now that would bring joy?
So that kind of reminds me of empathy, which is kind of one of those big words. It's just often hard to define. But the best way, if I was going to look at the dictionary definition of empathy, it's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. But to put it in really basic terms, it's to just walk in another man's shoes. Where do you see empathy coming into play with happiness and joy?
I think it has a lot to do, especially if you're starting to feel down or are depressed. And I don't mean clinical, but just kind of feeling blue. Being able to make someone else happy warms your own heart in a lot of ways, and helps us get outside of ourselves. And I always think that brings some joy. I think it could be simple. It could be shoveling the sidewalk for your neighbor or baking cookies, the simple things. But I do think it helps us forget a little bit about our own troubles, maybe, and being able to help someone else, whether they're in need or just it's something out of the blue.
Well, it could be as simple as just listening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. You could send a card, or like we said, send a text just to say, "Hey, I'm thinking about you."
Right. Like asking how are you doing, but actually meaning it.
Right. So I do think it's something that's practiced.
One thing I wanted to touch on is empathy. It sort of takes the focus off of ourselves. And it forces us to kind of, when we start to put ourselves in another person's shoes, obviously we then begin to absorb well, what is it like for somebody that's not like me? And the more we become aware of that, the the less self-serving we're going to be. And the more that we then are willing to serve others, or even just to do the basic things like listen or send that thoughtful text, it sort of does return to us. That joy then returns to us because we were willing to take the focus off of ourselves and place it on somebody else. Again, the more we take the focus off of ourselves, the more we realize, well, maybe I'm not alone in how I was feeling when I felt a certain way. The more we can realize that we're not alone in this world, or the more that we can help someone else understand you're not alone with whatever it is you're going through. I may not be able to fully relate to it if I haven't gone through it myself, but I can be empathetic. And by being empathetic, it's different than sympathy. You know, sympathy is more of a, oh, poor me, poor them, whatever. The empathy takes it a step further. And it's that willingness just to sometimes just be silent. I think we always feel like we have to have something to say when we learn that someone else is struggling. I think sometimes it's just being present with someone else. I may not know exactly what it is that you're dealing with, but I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to be present with you. And then as a result, we may not always find solutions to our problems, but at least, again, we can take joy in the fact that we are not alone.
Right. I think you find that we actually do have a lot in common, all of us, in human nature. And you would never learn those lessons without being able to show empathy, right? Or to get outside of yourself to help others. So I think when we're serving too, we have to be careful. It's this fine, I keep using fine line, but it is a fine line between what's your purpose. If your purpose is just to make yourself feel good, it's not really serving the way God has called us to serve. As we learn to become more empathetic, we become more understanding of the other person's needs, because right off the bat, we might think we know what a friend of ours needs, what our son or daughter needs, what a friend or family member needs. But until we take the time to listen and to sort of just invest in their life, we're not fully going to know. And oftentimes we end up giving people what they don't need, and therefore we're not actually serving them in the way that is necessary. Happiness comes when we can give other people grace, or when we've been given grace, right? Or we can give ourselves grace too. Or give ourselves grace, right? Well, and ultimately, hopefully what we're learning through all this uncertainty is that we can find happiness, we can find fulfillment in ways that we would not expect. But yeah, it's also the kind of thing that we can reflect back upon. And, so if you're a high school student, well, you can reflect back to what it was like in middle school, and you can see, oh, the things I thought made me happy in junior high didn't actually make me happy. And then and then you're a college student, you think, well, the things that I thought made me happy in high school didn't actually, and then you just kind of keep evolving and learning and growing. But it's a never ending journey. Right. I heard this quote once, it's about being committed to a long walk in the same direction. And sometimes we're sprinting and sometimes it's baby steps, but as long as we're sort of moving forward, and as long as we understand that we're not alone. But it's having a toolbox of knowing what it is where you can find joy, so that you don't get stuck in a rut or can't find your way out. And maybe that's a day that you need to reach out to text someone, that it's putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
We live in a world that is obsessed with the pursuit of happiness. And today the words happy and happiness have been reduced to this temporary state of self-gratification and pleasure. For us as people of faith, as followers of Jesus Christ, service to others and the seeking the well-being of others is part of the responsibility that comes with the happiness and the contentment and the blessings that God has given us. And Jesus modeled this very thing for us. In John chapter 13, we read these words. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. In other words, Jesus knew who he was content, he was happy, he was blessed with who he was, with his relationship with his Father. So it says he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And how could Jesus perform such a humble act of service to others? Because he was content, he was happy, he was blessed. He knew who he was with his Father in heaven. Many of you know that C.S. Lewis is one of my favorite authors, and in his classic book, Mere Christianity, Lewis describes the efforts of men and women throughout human history and their efforts to seek happiness apart from God. Lewis writes this: "What Satan put into the heads of our remote ancestors was the idea that they could be like God, could set up on their own as if they had created themselves, be their own masters, invent some sort of happiness for themselves outside God, apart from God. And out of that hopeless attempt has come nearly all that we call human history: money, poverty, ambition, war, prostitution, classes, empire, slavery, the long, terrible story of man trying to find something other than God which will make him happy." Friends, God cannot give us his happiness, his peace, apart from himself, because there's no such thing. We were designed to find our happiness and our purpose in our Creator through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and by living after the example of Jesus in serving others and putting their needs before ours. That is where we find true happiness.
Well, thanks again, Kay and Don, for sharing your wisdom on this topic of happiness and gratitude and empathy. And thank you to all of you who chimed in on social media, helping us answer these questions as well. Now, by now, we know we're all used to Zoom calls. Love it or leave it, it's here to stay. It's fairly practical, we have to admit, to stay connected with other people. It is what it is. And so lately, I had a conversation with some students on Zoom about this very topic. So here's a short discussion with some teenagers about the power of human connection and how that can build empathy in all of our lives, and how that also then can lead to a better understanding of other people, especially those that aren't like us. Let's take a look.
To talk about a big word that is really important that you've probably heard before, but you might not know how to define it. And that word is empathy. How many, raise your hand if you've heard the word empathy before. Well, raise your hand if you've heard a similar word called sympathy. Shout out the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the word sympathy.
Feeling for other people.
Okay.
Sympathy cards. Like when someone passes away, you usually send the family like cards saying like you're sorry for your loss.
Can you think of a movie, book, TV show where after you watched it or read it, it made you sad, or it made you really sort of feel for that a certain character maybe that you were watching or reading about?
Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and one of my favorite characters died during the 5th book. So kind of sad, I guess.
Alert. Maybe you're not even realizing it, but when you read a book, if you read a book and you really liked it, it's probably because you connected with one of the characters, right? Harry Potter, Hermione, the redheaded kid, I don't know. Snow.
I'm reading a book right now that's about a girl playing basketball, and like she's struggling with keeping her grades up, keeping her friends, making sure that she's doing good on the basketball team, and I relate to that a lot.
Right. So based on that, because you play basketball and you're reading a book about someone who plays basketball, you're making a connection, right? Human life is all about connection. Like we have opportunities to connect to other people.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say you had a really bad game. Would you rather a friend come to you after the game and say, "Suck it up, Izzy. At least you get to play basketball"? Or would you rather them say, "Hang in there, Izzy. You got this. I got your back. Keep working at it.
The second one.
Yeah. Or Izzy, I could say, you know what? I've had bad games too, and I know that sucks. Like that's rough. But you're going to get through it. Like if Brenna texted me and said, hey, I failed a test. What am I going to do? I'm going to get kicked out of school and I don't know how to tell my parents. Maybe my first response should be, wow, Brenna, I'm really sorry. I don't even really know what to say, but I'll listen. Micah, how is caring for others connected to empathy?
Whenever you care for people, you can feel what they're going through and be able to have a conversation about it.
When they're going through a hard time, or just helping them out in general. Or
Okay.
even like a simple text like, how are you doing?
So that other person can know that my number one concern is that I just care about that other person. It's just you trying to understand what someone else is going through. Think about it whenever you've gone through a difficult time. What kind of a response do you want from a friend?
That they're like there for you no matter what you need.
Right. Let's look at these scriptures.
Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ.
Continue to remember those who are mistreated as if you yourself were suffering.
You know, my guess is that some of you guys probably have a friend or two that's probably struggled over this school year, maybe with some grades or with some like mental health stuff like anxiety, stress, depression. I'm sure if you have friends that have gone through that, you know, they could use a little word of encouragement, right? The best way we can be kind to other people is just to pay attention.
Like if they need something, just to like make sure you're there and make sure you're not like, if they need to say something, you need to listen to what they're saying.
But sometimes an empathetic response is just be real and just be there, and maybe sometimes just pause and listen. I will say this, you can always pray, just pray to yourself, God, give me the right words to say as I talk with this friend. Trust that God can guide your steps so that you'll know exactly, you know, what to say and when to say it, or what to do and when to do it. Get it?
Got it.
I feel like I talk
Got it.
a lot. It's kind of a challenging topic, I think.
Well, thank you all for tuning in to this second episode of Coffee Talk. No matter where you're viewing this from, at home, at work, at school, wherever, hopefully not in class, or on your lunch break, I just hope that it's inspired you to face another day with joy in your heart. And like I said last week, my mantra is to take things one day at a time. And I hope that you can do that as well. Remember, we're not alone in this world, and we're in this together. But I do want to give you a couple challenges for the week. All right, first off, I want to challenge you to go to YouTube and watch this short video titled Brené Brown on Empathy. Brené Brown is a motivational speaker and an award-winning author. And I guarantee if you watch this short video, it will help you better understand the differences between empathy and sympathy. So that's your first assignment. And number two, do a random act of kindness. Pay for someone's coffee behind you at the drive-thru. Drop off a homemade pie to a neighbor or a loved one. Send an anonymous card to someone who's struggling right now. Or post something hope-filled on your social media account. Why? Because kindness matters. And kindness makes people feel less alone. And we all need to feel connected during these challenging times because we become more happy the more connected we are with each other. So I challenge you to become more empathetic and understanding of others as we face this together. Lastly, I just want to remind you, you can always connect with us on social media, on our Instagram page and on our website. And also share this video if you want with friends. Also check out the link in our bio for some talk sheets that you can use then in your own life or with your small group. All right, well, I hope it's been good for you. It's been good for me. Remember, be kind to one another. Peace out.